All right, good morning, good morning, good morning. Give me a minute to start Go Guardian. I find it's easier to take attendance from Go Guardian. All right, so those of you just came in, we're in Canvas under how we used energy. Again, review your information on photosynthesis and respiration, what they have to do with each other. Everybody should know what they have to do with each other. So while we're waiting for everybody else to get logged in, we're only missing a couple of people, it looks like. Go to Canvas. We're logged into how we use energy. And we're just below the video for photosynthesis and respiration. All right. Okay, almost everybody. Does that to you too? Mm, it's not it. Okay, got a lot of you. Again, you should be looking at the boxes on photosynthesis, respiration. Look at those matching pictures where you have to pull up match the words with the picture. I'm going to do that in just a second, as soon as I finish the attendance. Okay. Okay, and I do need to say this, logging in and then not doing anything. GoGuardian also records how long you've been idle. That means you're not participating in the course. And if I see that at the end of the class, how long you've been idle, I'll mark you absent. So make sure if you're logged in, be doing what you're supposed to be doing. Okay. All right, so everybody should be how do organisms get their energy? You should be looking at trying to get those words matched up with the pictures. That's where everybody should be. Mhm. Okay, I think I got it right now. All right, so let's look at what you should have been matched up. I'll share my screen. All right, from last class, let's just kind of review the thing at the top. What you need for cellular energy to occur. Oops, hold on. You got to turn it. All right, you need oxygen and a food source such as glucose. We wrote down the equation for cellular respiration, which was glucose plus oxygen. And when you have the chemical reaction that takes place, it releases carbon dioxide and water. So this is what they're looking at, a food source. And most of the time, it's glucose because we break down our food to the smallest common denominator, and then it's usually glucose. All right, you need to know what ATP is. If you don't know what ATP is, you need to write it down. It is the molecule that is produced for cellular energy. Okay, you might have talked about it in biology because in biology you had to break this down into light reactions and dark reactions, and you had to actually know that ATP was adenosine triphosphate, and you get the energy by breaking off one of those little phosphate molecules as it goes through the Krebs cycle and the electron transport cycle. All right. What is needed for photosynthesis to occur? You need sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water. So again, when we look at the equation for photosynthesis and respiration, we are just looking at the reverse of one. So with photosynthesis, you're taking in carbon dioxide and water. You need a little sunlight, otherwise this reaction doesn't take place. And it gives off, or it creates glucose, which is the stored food, and then it gives off the oxygen. Then we take for respiration, we take that equation backwards. We take that stored energy and glucose and the oxygen we take in from the atmosphere that was released from the plants, and we combine those, and then we give off carbon dioxide and water. So it's the same equation. If you learn one equation, you know the other. You just need to know which way it's going in order to identify whether it's photosynthesis or respiration. They like to say that the products of one are the reactants of the other. All right, do autotrophs need to carry out cellular respiration? First, you need to know what an autotroph is. Trophs are the trophs means feeding levels. Auto means self, so they are the self feeders, and only self feeders are plants. Okay, they make the food during photosynthesis. Okay, so now we need to know, do they carry out cellular respiration? And the answer is yes, because they make their own food, but then they have to use the food in order to do all their life processes. Plants still have to grow, they still have to repair themselves, they still have to reproduce. All of that requires energy. So they make the food and then use the food for during cellular respiration for to get their energy to do those processes. So a lot of times, and they ask this question because a lot of times the mindset is plants do photosynthesis, animals do respiration, when in fact plants do both. Okay, plants make the food, then use the food. So they do photosynthesis and respiration. Animals don't make their food. They have to take their food in. So they only do cellular respiration. Okay. All right. So if you hadn't reviewed those slides, you should have. Then come down here and look. I was looking at GoGuardian. Some of you have done this, um, and some of you haven't. But if you haven't, you need, because you're going to get a picture like this, a quiz type picture, and you're going to have to match them up. All right. What you need to remember is that the sun is the original source of all energy. All food chains, all food webs, all start with getting their energy from the sun. So if you're drawing a food web, somewhere off to the side, there's a sun, and it's usually reflecting to the part of your food web where all the plants are. All right, so then we have our picture with the grass, and the grass is an autotroph because they're going to photosynthesize. That's why they're nice and green. Okay, they are producers. Okay, and I just finished saying that they photosynthesize, so maybe we should do this in this way. Okay, all right, they are the producers. They are the only producers. Okay, there are no other producers. We're going to look at different types of producers as far as not just grass, because we tend to think of in terrestrial environments that there's grass and trees, but then we also have to think about aquatic environments. And we've got a lot of late folks here. Hold on one second. Let me let these late people in. Still got one in the waiting room. Okay. All right. So those are the words that you should have underneath grass. So again, the sun is the only source of energy for all ecosystems. Um, Plants of any kind, and I was in the middle of saying that the aquatic ecosystems also have uh, plants in them. Okay, so we need to think about those kinds of plants. All right, the cow is a consumer. Okay, it is not a producer. It is a consumer because it does not make its own food. It is um, a heterotroph because heterotrophs mean the feeding level means that they get the food from somewhere other than themselves. And they are not omnivores because they don't eat meat. But if there was another level, let me see if they want you to leave that word out. If there was, if we were in the picture, we would be an omnivore because we eat both plants and animals. But I don't think the term omnivore should fit in there. I guess it does. Come on. Now it won't go. All right, but I'm going to leave this like this, that again, omnivore really should, with a cow does not eat meat. Cow is a herbivore, it eats grass. So omnivore would be for something that Okay. And Ms. James, I don't know what you mean that you're done with it. Done with what? What is it? All right, and then the internet has been kicking folks out, so I understand that. I know if you were in already, I don't have to, and I admit you back in. I know that you were here. Okay. I don't know what that means, done with it. Okay. All right, now we need to make sure that you understand this vocabulary. So again, autotrophs. And autotrophs in the bottom of the ocean refers to the fact that uh, they're too far away from the sun. They don't see the sun, but they still make their own food. But they use chemicals that seep up from the floor of the ocean. So they're coming from the center. Certain chemicals, sulfurs and things are coming through the ocean floor from the center of the earth. And they use those chemicals to make food. Okay, so those organisms, plant organisms down there, that's what they do. So those are the autotrophs. So chemotrophs are not usually organisms that are close to the surface with the sunlight. Then we have our heterotrophs. They are consumers. So we have producers and we have consumers. And there's three kinds of consumers, and actually four if you count decomposers. Um, Herbivores only eat plants. Carnivores only eat meat. Omnivores eat both plants and animals. Decomposers eat everything. They eat the producers, they eat the herbivores, the carnivores, because they're the ones that are responsible for breaking down um, all living matter so that the materials can be recycled. All right, so that's the other thing that we have to keep in mind, that all of these things are recycled. All right, so we're going to go to the next page over here. And we're going to look at exactly how this flows. All right. We've got two different pictures, but basically they're saying the same thing. We've got one that's in a straight chain. Actually, I have three different pictures. One that's a straight chain, and it starts at the bottom with microscopic organisms. And these are our ocean plankton. So on all of these, you have the word plankton. There's two types of plankton. There's phytoplankton, which are the plants, and then there's zooplankton, which are your microscopic animals. So you need to make sure that when we're looking at the bottom of a pyramid or the bottom of a food chain or the bottom of a food web, when we're looking at the term plankton, I see all three of these just say plankton, we need to consider that phytoplankton are the only ones that are producers. Okay, so they're at the bottom, and then everything, then you have the organisms above that. So notice there's arrows in the first one, and that's going to be our food chain. So again, food chain, food web, food pyramid, and they're all saying the same thing, just in a different way. All right, notice the organisms are the same in each one. All right, so the plankton is at the bottom, and it's at the bottom in all three of these. Then we have our little, what they call crustaceans, krill, that are eating the phytoplankton. Okay, and then you have in the food chain, they have the crabs and other small fish that are next. So they have, in your food web, you have krill, and then you have larger fish. And in the pyramid, there are the herrings. And then the food chain has a dolphin. Then we have in the middle, they have a seal. And then they have the shark, and they got a whale. And notice the whale, there's nothing above the whale. There's no arrows going beyond the whale. There's on the other two, they have the shark. So the pyramid and the food chain tend to just look at one type of feeding relationship, where the food web we're going to looks at several. Okay, so we've got a variety of things in the middle, but the two on the end tend to be the same. But it goes from producer to consumer, and then these are the three types of consumers: primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary consumers, and then apex. And this one has quaternary, which is not a word that's used often. Most of the time, you're going to say apex consumer, which means they're at the top, nobody's eating them. Okay? All right. Energy flows in one direction. You need to remember, energy flows in one direction. And that's what the arrows are showing you. Okay. All right, what I'd like for you to do, because you have these here, but they don't have any definitions with them. Copy. You all write this title, trophic levels, and then copy this information in your notes, because you need to know how to define each of those. Trophic levels show the feeding relationship. So that word trophic always has something in front of it. Autotroph, heterotroph. Oh, it's always something in front of it. Then it changes to herbivores and carnivores. But so these are vocabulary that you need to be familiar with. All right, so the organism, and this is important, the first level is always your producers. Examples of these are algae, green plants, and they make their own food and use it to get energy. So it's important that you have your examples. Algae, microscopic organisms, but they are plants. Algae is when your pool gets too green, it's because you got too much algae growing on top of it. When you go to lakes and ponds and they start having that green cover across the top of that's algae. But there are still other microscopic organisms that are present. Okay, second levels are the consumers, primary consumers. So everything after producer is a consumer because it does not make its own food. Okay, the primary consumers are the ones that eat the producers. Okay, and that's all they eat. So they're vegetarians or herbivores. All right, then the next level above that, they are the secondary consumers. My goodness, I can't. All right, so these organisms eat the herbivores. They tend to be the meat eaters or carnivores. All right, the fourth level are tertiary consumers. So while they're the fourth level on the pyramid, they are the third type of consumer. A lot of these organisms are also carnivores. And they're eating the animals that are eating other animals. Now, I did, this is not giving you another level called apex consumer. Back on the Canvas page, they called it a quaternary. So they give it a fourth level consumer, but they can also call apex consumers because they're the top of the food chain. Then the most important one are the decomposers. They are needed to break down both plants and animals. So when things die, they don't just die and stay there, otherwise the planet would be very cluttered. But when they die, decomposers, bacteria and fungi and all those kinds of organisms, they break down things that die and return nutrients back to the soil. They return gases back to the atmosphere, and then our cycle starts all over again. All right, we might as well stay on this page. You don't have to write anything other, you don't have to keep writing. And once you've written those, once you've written decomposers, you can stop. And again, you need to remember, important that producers make their own energy. And this is all about energy. Where's the energy coming from? We eat in order to gain energy. Photosynthesis is the process where producers get their energy. They make the food, and then they take their energy from the food that they create during photosynthesis. Okay? All right. So in the diagram that they showed you on Canvas, the first one was called a food chain. And a food chain is simple. It says this organism eats this organism that eats this, and it's just one level of relationships in an ecosystem. So you can write the word food chain, and then you can write it as a chain. So don't write the paragraph, just write producer. And the arrow is important, and the direction that the arrow points is important also, because it tells you that the direction of energy flow. Energy is flowing from the producer to the primary consumer, to the secondary consumer, to the tertiary consumer. Okay, so just write the word food chain and then write the example: producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer. And again, don't forget the arrows because they are important. Okay, all righty. And they give you an example, but the important thing about any example, and next time I see you, you'll have pictures and you'll have to identify the organisms in the picture as to what their role is. So an example, it could be a rose bush. And then the organisms, the aphids are little bugs that are sitting on the rose bush eating up all the leaves. So they are your primary consumers. And then you have the birds that eat the aphids. And then you have the bigger hawk that eats the little birds that are eating the aphids that are sitting on the rosebud eating up the leaves. Okay? Rose bush eating up the leaves. All right. So there's an order to this. The thing at the top is feeding on the thing underneath it. But the arrows go in the direction of energy flow. All right, so then we have food webs. Food webs, and then you need to, let's see what I want to say here. Okay, this one. Write this one down. A food web is a diagram you use to show all and underline all the food chains that are linked together and interact with each other. You don't have to write such as seen in the example. So just write up to there. Okay. But then look at the example. Right, so in an environment, and it's same with you, you don't eat one kind of food all the time. In nature, if they're going to survive, they have to find multiple sources of food. Because as we're going to talk about later, if we take one of those food sources out, it upsets everything. They have to feed on something else, or they feed more on an organism that they maybe just snacked on. But if that's all there is, and then that's all they're going to eat. So we're going to look at what happens if you take one of these organisms out of this food web. Okay. All right. So what you need to be able to do with a food web is to follow the arrows. So again, next time I see you, the challenge for you is going to be to create the food webs. It's like 3 or 4 food webs that food chains that you see within a food web. And again, the arrows flow from what is eaten to what is doing the eating. So, let's see, let me give you all something to do. Right now, starting at the bottom, and we always start at the bottom because that's where our producers are. Um, somebody give me a food chain that has the rat in it. Somebody give me one that has the deer in it. Someone give me a food chain that has the butterfly, and somebody else do a frog. So pick one of those and just follow the arrows. Tell me who is eating it. Follow it all the way up to the top. Notice at the top, nobody's eating this cat, nobody's eating the mountain lion or the wolf. Or who is this? He looks like a mongoose. It says pine marten. No, somebody's eating the pine marten. All right. Can I share this link? I certainly can. Copy. Let me share it for everybody. Jayla asked me to share the link, if that would be helpful. Sharing it with everybody. All right, you got to start from the bottom. So start with the plant, but I'm just saying pick the ones so all of them start with the plant. So always put your plant. It's blocked. It's, it's blocked even though I have GoGuardian on it. Maybe my GoGuardian turned off. It did. No, it didn't. All right. Well, just look at it from where I'm looking. And I got so many of you not looking at it. Why is that? I'm looking at GoGuardian and I got one person. Thank you, Imani, who's actually looking at it. All right, don't worry about trying to do the link because somebody said it's blocking that. And we're not going to worry about unblocking. We just need everybody to look at the diagram that we're on now. Like I said, I got 3 people looking at this, 4. And folks, and I can't help you if you're not where you're supposed to be. If you're trying to multitask, then it's not going to work. All right, so let me see who's answered the question. All right, so Jayla says a plant, and again, I'm going to come back. Like I said, folks, I can't sit here and monitor you all the time. So if you're not interested in looking at what you're supposed to be looking for, when you don't pass the test, that's on you. All right. Back to what we should be looking at. That's right. Y'all were looking at me looking at GoGuardian, weren't you? All right, let's go back over here. All right, so we're looking at this picture. All right, everybody there? What was the question? The question was you need to write down at least, everybody needs to give me at least one food chain in this food web. This food web shows you all the feeding relationships in this particular ecosystem. So that means this is near some water. So some of the organisms are plants near the water. So these are the kind of organisms that hang out there. Give me one feeding system. So I'm gonna come back up here. All right, so we got a plant, we've got the deer, and the deer is, and you got to remember, you got to follow the arrow. So all right, so let's just say, I'm going to start with yours, Jayla. You got the plant, and then you've got the deer, but now you need to figure out um, what arrow is going from the deer. And I see two blue arrows that go from the deer. One of them goes to the mountain lion. So that's what you have, deer, mountain lion. And one of them goes to the wolf. Now, if we're doing a food chain, we wouldn't include both of them, okay? We would just do one, unless you want to say, okay, the wolf, okay, there's no arrow saying that the wolf is going to eat the mountain lion. So your food chain would actually just go plant, deer, mountain lion, or plant, deer, wolf, okay? That would be that one. All right. Somebody has plant, squirrel, jackrabbit, mountain lion. Same thing. Plant, squirrel. Now the squirrel has 3 different arrows going from it. There's an arrow going to the pine marten. So now we're looking at these kind of black arrows. And it's nicely color coded, but it's kind of confusing. All right, so we're looking at the squirrel. The arrow goes from the squirrel to the pine marten. And then what eats the pine marten would be our cat or the mountain lion. And that would be the end of that food chain. Or the squirrel, you can have plant squirrel and then jackrabbit and then mountain lion, or plant squirrel, jackrabbit, and wolf. But again, you're not going to say your food chain would not include both of them. It would include one or the other. Okay? A butterfly. All right. So the plant, and again, it always has to start with the plant. All your food chains have to start with a plant. So they don't name the plant, so you just say plant. Some of them are water plants, some of them are on the edge of the land. But we have we have a plant. Then we have the butterfly. Now we're looking at the green lines from the butterfly. So we've got one to go to the jackrabbit. So it could be the butterfly, the plant, the butterfly, the jackrabbit, the mountain lion, or it could be the plant, the butterfly, eagle. Just somebody had the eagle. And then notice there's no arrows from the eagle. So that's the end of the line there. Okay, nobody's eating the eagle. All right, you can have the butterfly and with this whiptail, but then the whiptail can be eaten by the cat or it can be eaten by the wolf. So that's the directions you can go there. All right, is everybody following how I'm reading this? Because you're going to have to do this. Okay, and some of you are kind of, you're right and you're not right. Okay. All right, then we have our frog. A frog is eating the plant, and then the frog's line, they look like they're purple. Let me see if I can. Um, okay, I know what to do with this. Gotcha. I'm going to just enlarge this picture a little bit. I was.
It's time for us to go, by the way.
It sure is 4 minutes ago. Okay. All right. So thank you, because yeah, you're almost late for your next class. Time flies. All right. See you next time. Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.